Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Beginning with our first breaking news of the day, a Russian Su-24 tactical bomber has appeared to disappear on radar over the Volgograd region. A lot of speculation has started to circle around this aircraft that was just reported missing nearly an hour ago, and at the moment, there are no clear answers, but there are several suggestions as to what could have happened, and some clear answers to what may have not happened, most certainly. Starting off with the first and most obvious statement that most people will be making about this Su-24 is that it was most likely shot down. And the statement would most likely be untrue. Given the geographical region of Volgograd, nearly 200 miles away from the Ukrainian border and nearly 270 miles away from the active front line, it is highly unlikely, if not impossible, that a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile would have been able to be launched from Ukrainian territory and hit the Su-24, causing it to crash somewhere in the Volgograd region. It could have also crashed near Surovikino, which is about as far west as the Volgograd region goes before we start getting towards the Ukrainian border. That is still nearly 200 miles away from the active front line, however, and would largely be out of most Ukrainian surface-to-air missile systems' ranges. The Patriot PAC-2 missiles, if the Ukrainians have them, most likely would be able to reach around 130 miles range before it was completely spent as far as its speed and ability to actually maneuver to intercept a target, meaning that it would still be well out of the range of any Ukrainian surface-to-air missile defense system. So we know that that's not what the Su-24 crashed for. There are several other options. One could be pilot error. The problem with that, however, is that checking a weather forecast in the local area before the stream began, or more so this news summary began, we saw that the weather in the area was clear and lightly cloudy, hardly even partly cloudy. And so the fact that pilot error could have been committed where the aircraft would have crashed is also mostly unlikely due to the fair weather in the area and clear visibility being seen by the pilot, meaning that there wasn't really a lot of room for error for him to accidentally collide into the ground and crash the craft. Another likely example of what could have happened is some kind of a mechanical failure with the aircraft. The pilots may have bailed out. We haven't gotten any information on that at the moment, but the engines could have been poorly maintained, or there may have been a loss of the hydraulic systems that operate the aircraft's control surfaces, meaning that the Su-24 was ultimately lost. A final example of what may have possibly happened is that the pilots just simply crashed the plane. Fairly straightforward. And I know that was a little bit of a weird way to end this, but regardless of whether the pilots were competent or not, or whether there was a mechanical failure, the pilots may have conducted a very bold maneuver, ended up over-G'ing, passing out, and crashing the plane straight into the ground. At the moment, the answers aren't exactly clear. The fact that the aircraft did disappear off of radar, however, does indicate that this aircraft has crashed at the moment, and we're trying to ascertain what really happened to it. Also, another important thing to get out of this is that it is not a normal Su-24, it is an Su-24MR. Su-24MRs are a rarer variant of the Su-24 that is able to carry more weapons of differing varieties. And if I can find y'all an Su-24MR right here, this is an Su-24MR. Not only can the Su-24MR carry your normal air-to-ground ordnance, but all Soviet aircraft were made where they could also carry a light amount of air-to-air weaponry. And one of those that most Su-24s usually can't carry, that the MR can, is an R-27 radar-guided missile. The radar-guided missiles are something a little bit exceptional. Aircraft like these usually carry R-73s, which are equivalent to an AIM-9 Sidewinder here in the West, but this R-27 is more comparable to something along the lines of an AIM-7. It's very interesting to see that the Su-24 in question could have possibly filled an air-to-air role, but it doesn't really add a lot of information as to why the craft may have crashed, but nevertheless, giving us a little bit more information about a rarer variant of the Su-24 in Russian service, and apparently the Russians have, unfortunately, lost one today. Of course, we'll be waiting to see more additional news coming out about this aircraft, but the mystery around it is incredibly interesting at the moment, because not even Russian ground crews have been able to find the lost Su-24 at this moment. It is burning in a field somewhere, we're fairly certain, but still, no sign of the aircraft, either on radar or visually, has been seen yet since its loss was reported in the area. Moving on from that interesting bit of news and further on up into Russia, we also got to hear something about our favorite warlord. Many of y'all may know about Viktor Bout, not Yevgeny Prigozhin. He was our favorite warlord for a while in not really a loving way until his plane crashed due to being shot down. But Viktor Bout is a bit of a special case. Many of y'all may know him as the warlord that was played by Nicolas Cage in the movie Lord of War, which was actually a biography of a sort of Viktor Bout's life of being an arms dealer. It was largely based on his story. Viktor Bout was released last year in replacement for Brittany Griner, which was a WNBA basketball player in the Russian Federation, and since Viktor Bout's return, he has been a shill for the Russian government, largely saying whatever they want and really doing whatever they want as well. And it appears that he's starting to move back up the ladder, at least for the Russian government. According to information that came out just today, nearly 4 hours ago, Viktor Bout is now on the Legislative Assembly of the Ulyanovsk region of the LDPR party list. And, of course, the somewhat sarcastic line, Russia is a country of opportunities. We can see Viktor Bout here, apparently basking in his glory of being a member of the LDPR, which is the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia. The party largely is an anti-communist but anti-capitalist party that has some kind of a middle ground policy in between the two. It's largely a front. It, of course, supports Putin, and Putin's party is the United Russia Party, but this one kind of falls in with the United Russia Party as a coalition member. Of course, if you look at the interior politics of the Russian Federation, the United Russia Party also largely condemns capitalism and also communism as well, kind of trying to pick its own middle route so that way Putin can do whatever he wants and make whatever decisions he wants without having to worry about getting in the way of capitalism or communism or any other kind of economic structure or any other kind of form of governance. But nevertheless, fairly interesting to see that they're trying to bring Viktor Bout back up into the highlights and trying to make him more of a public figure, which seems somewhat odd. But public figures are abound in Russia today, apparently. While Viktor Bout may be moving up the political chain in Russia, it appears that Kim Jong Un has decided to visit Russia today. We're most likely assuming that this video was actually taken near Volgograd, although I haven't been able to get any additional information, or Vladivostok, most likely not Volgograd. Volgograd is fairly close in the same area as Moscow as far as east to west goes. This was most likely filmed in the city of Vladivostok, way over here on the very eastern fringe of the Russian Federation. This is probably the first place that the train could have crossed the border and made it to, and the train will either be making it all the way to Moscow, or Putin will fly out on the Russian Air Force One, the Ilyushin 96, to Vladivostok to then meet with Kim Jong Un there. We can see Kim Jong Un stepping out of the armored train, of course famous, and making his way down. Something very interesting about this meeting is that there are a lot of Ordnance Board members of the North Korean party that are here with Kim Jong Un, showing that the purposes for this visit are most likely centered around the idea of getting an arms deal in between the Russians and North Koreans. With that, that's the end of that clip, but giving us an idea that apparently the Russians and North Koreans are going to seriously discuss today the idea of getting into a combined arms deal. A combined arms deal in between the Russians and North Koreans is one that we're most likely expecting will not result in much, but it is an interesting step nevertheless. North Korea is known for having an army that is unparalleled around the world, in fact having some tractors to display at their military parade recently. These are a part of a paramilitary display of the North Korean army, showing what would happen if a war was to begin. Not just the North Korean army would rise up, but the North Korean citizenry and their paramilitary form would rise up as well with their farm and industrial equipment and try and help to crush the wicked American capitalist. Nevertheless, it seems as though, based off of what we're looking at right there, I would get a good idea that the North Koreans don't really have that much to offer in terms of actual weaponry to give. Unless if you take a tractor as being a form of weaponry, or maybe a grenade launcher and an AK, which are weapons but fairly cheap and easy to produce even for the Russians at this point in the war, they're not really going to be able to offer much. I'll be quite surprised to see if any advanced weaponry came out of North Korea. North Korea is usually known for producing incredibly cheap equipment that is very simplistic, but they aren't really able to manufacture much on their own. Albeit, they were able to apparently produce one nuclear submarine. But beyond that, we haven't really seen anything else come out of North Korea. They've never produced their own indigenous fighter. They have never produced their own indigenous tank until just a few months ago, and a lot of people think that the tank is fake or poorly designed, and is probably a mixture of both. But we're assuming that the North Koreans will not be able to give the Russians much in any kind of an arms deal. Of course, the United States protests this greatly, and this has led to some critics to say that North Korea actually has a lot more weaponry to provide than is being told on the surface. Truth is, they don't have any weaponry. That's really the truth. The thing is that the United States is always constantly trying to condemn any of our rivals or adversaries and supporting the other. It is a part of the diplomatic game that every nation plays. And so we would not want the North Koreans to support the Russians, not because it actually will turn the war around for the Russians in Ukraine, but just over the fact and the principle that it would be one of our adversaries supporting another one in interests that are, of course, against the United States' interests in Eastern Europe. But nevertheless, it appears that it will be going underway to some small degree, and we will have to wait and see if the Russians and North Koreans end up coming to some kind of an arms arrangement. We'll most likely see an arrangement, if there is one made, along the lines of guns for food, considering that the North Koreans are still largely impoverished and lacking any kind of reliable food source at the moment. The Chinese are the only country that provides food to them en masse, and it appears to not be enough, at least from our current information. Moving on from the news inside of Russia and over to the Latvian border, it appears that the Latvian government is considering closing down the border crossing at the village of Selene, as it appears that there's a large influx of illegal migrants entering from Belarus and going into Latvia. This is a somewhat concerning development. The fact that illegal immigration is occurring on this border is very concerning, because there is the fact that it could possibly be Russian saboteurs from the FSB or Belarusian saboteurs from the Belarusian equivalent of the FSB that are entering through these waves of illegal migrants and then making their way into the European Union at large to conduct whatever operations they may want to achieve. This could pose a major issue. Of course, I don't even have to explain why, and that's why the Latvians are considering closing down that one border crossing. We're not really sure if that's going to be followed by others, considering that closing one border crossing is most likely not going to stop the flow of illegal immigration, but nevertheless, it is a situation the Latvians are incredibly concerned about, and it appears that they're trying to get a handle on the situation before things continue to degrade and become far worse. Moving on into the center of Ukraine, and this marker has no real specific location, we just put it into the center of Ukraine so that way it wasn't in the city, but we've heard big news that the Antonov aircraft company, famous for producing the largest aircraft in the world, is going to be shifting entirely to drone production. Antonov opened up a new drone center today, which aims to enhance drone manufacturing capabilities in Ukraine, which is going to be a massive step forward for the Ukrainians in ensuring that a large amount of drones can be used, because drones so far have proven to be one of the war-changing technological implementations of this war, and the Ukrainians and the Antonov company are most likely hoping to continue to expound upon this new technological breakthrough and make it far more successful and far more efficient than it has been in the past. We hope that the Antonov company will be able to reach great successes. We can already see that a lot of Ukrainian homemade drones that were not produced by large companies such as Antonov have done incredibly well so far, and hopefully they'll be able to continue to do incredibly well on into the future. But with that, that is the end of the breaking news today. Of course, thank all of y'all so much once again for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe button, and also make sure to support us on Patreon, link in the description below. But with that, thank you all once again, and I will see you in the next one.